Well, guys, talk about the old scene, man, since that's kind of the theme that we're starting with here, and certainly Priscilla, as far as the, I don't know if we're going to say hair bands or whatever go,
right.
but Priscilla was one of the top ones, man. I mean, there was you guys, and there was SOS was a big one that you could go and see, but there was, it was almost at that time frame, that mid 80s time frame, it was like the perfect accompaniment to the nationals that were playing at the Coliseum or wherever.
Right, exactly. That's what, that's Tom and I, my guitarist right here, that was that era that we were going. We were the kids that were coming up in that. So we were doing, what I was really into back then was like new wave of British heavy metal. That was like a big influence of mine when I was a teenager. I loved the old Def Leppard, Tigers of Pantang, stuff like that. Sure. And even like before UFO, Thin Lizzy, I grew up when I was a little kid listening to all that.
Right.
So then when the hair band scene exploded with Poison and Motley Crue and all those bands, that was what us kids were listening to. So Priscilla was basically mimicking that. But, it's like people ask me now, oh, you still listen to all that stuff? Well, you know what? I didn't really listen to that much stuff back then of the hair band scene. I did. I mean, trust me. There's a lot of that I love. Cinderella Night songs, Wasp, things like that. Queensryche, old Queensryche, the EP, Rage for Order, stuff like that. I was really into that stuff, but like not so much like the really glam stuff, even though that's what we were doing.
Right.
That wasn't my main influence, which is funny because like I said, when people ask me, you still listen to that? I didn't listen to it that much back then.
Right, sure.
But I'm a fan. I mean, I am.
Well, and there's nothing wrong with being a fan of any of it. The important thing, I would imagine, as a band, is not to get sucked into trying to sound like what's going on at that time, because you end up pigeonholing yourself to a
and we did
3-year period.
Everyone said, we're doing the Poison thing, which I guess my voice had that Bret Michaels, Vince Neil twang kind of thing going on. It did. It just happened to be what was happening. So we did get pigeonholed into that. And like when Z-Rock started playing us, which was a big break for us because our Wake Up the Neighborhood was a song that hit the top 10 on there, and a couple of other songs, which is a real big deal for us at the time.
Sure.
But people were calling in on Z-Rock thinking that we were Poison. They thought Poison had put out something new. And, that wasn't the case, obviously.
Right.
But, yeah, I mean, it's like, of course that's going to happen. But, yeah, the scene back then, like you were asking, like the movie The Dirt, that's like, Motley Crue's having their second coming or third or fourth coming by this point, at this point. That was the scene. That was everyone's reality in the scene that we were in, the bands, that we were playing with, touring with, going on the road with. That was the scene. It was the decade of decadence. There's no doubt about it. So it was fun. I mean, that was a blast for sure. You couldn't get away from that party. So that fed into the whole thing. As much as we were playing that and living up to that, we bought into that hype and we became that hype, if that makes sense.
I think when you're writing songs as a band, you can't just try to say, we want to sound like this. You got to see the guys in a band, and you're going to get your own sound, and you can't be fake and like, all right, we want to sound like Queensryche. Well, with your singer's voice, you're not going to sound like, or your guitar player, you're going to sound like who you want to sound like, and that comes out naturally. And not saying, because I believe everybody, you can't say, I just like metal, I just like slow stuff, I just like rap. Everybody, you have more than one emotion.
Right.
So when people say, I'm like, man, I like a lot of stuff.
Right. And as we were talking about, before we came on the air, that was unfortunately one of those things that kind of hurt Priscilla, was when management people stuck their nose in and decided, well, now you guys are 9 Inch Nails.
Right.
And I was like, whoa,
Yep.
And it was, and I'm not saying that you wouldn't be into that, but it didn't fit.
Well,
the rep you built.
When you're a kid, you think it's going to last forever.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was the thing, like at that time, Mitch, our manager, Mitch Karczewski, who you shared an office with, I remember him telling me way back to then, he said, listen, he goes, this is your time now. He goes, you're not going to be a kid forever. I'm like, screw it, I thought it was going to last forever. And then it's gone. You look back, it's like, where'd the last 30 years go, And like, we got our show, we're doing the JCU ball benefit show in December. And it's like, that was our first show was 30 years ago, almost to the day. I think our show was December 15th at Peabody's, our first show out. And this one's December 14th. But to the day, 30 years. And like, you look back and it's like, where did that time go, man? You know, it's gone. It's in a wink of an eye. It's just gone. But yeah, but going back to Mitch, yeah, obviously, like you and I were talking before we came on the air, you know, at the end there was things going on with other local bands that, you know, he was having falling outs with.
Right.
And he was using us as a tool, I guess, to get back at them. I don't know what the game was, but him and I, you know, right before his death, untimely death, had a falling out over that. Because I said, this isn't going to work for us, and this isn't who we are at all.
Right.
And we had a shouting match. That was our last discussion before he died, and that really sucks. It breaks my heart that it had to be like that. But
That's Shok Paris burning it down here at the 78th Street studio here in Cleveland, Ohio for the Raining Rock photo event or art event, if you want to call it. And that, of course, is Shok Paris with Burn It Down. And this is Neeley along with my good friend Chris Akin. And Chris is like working equipment he knows nothing about.
They can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Yeah, that one's mono. That one's mono.
Okay.
All right, so you're only hear it in one.
I've had that before, mono.
You want the stereo one, Vic?
What's that? Let's take it off one ear.
All right, but anyway, we got Vic Hicks here, and I don't know your name. I'm sorry.
Ken Herb.
Screaming.
Screaming.
And
Screaming herb.
And they stopped here at the event to kind of chat it up with us a little bit. And Shok Paris has had somewhat of a resurgence in the last few years. And of course, they've had the opportunity to go over to Germany for the Wacken Festival, and and you guys are.
Headbangers, right? Headbangers.
We did a number of shows over there.
Yeah.
We've never been to Wacken yet.
Bang Your Head.
Bang Your Head Festival.
Bang Your
Rock
Head.
Hard.
Headbangers
Yep.
Open Air.
Headbangers Open Air.
Yeah.
Keep It True.
Keep It True.
And then
those three, and we were in
Up the Hammers in Athens, Greece.
Nice.
You guys be celebrities and shit.
It's amazing. Bigger over there.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
nuts.
They're crazy.
We were talking to Jim Hamar earlier about that, and it's the same question that I'll ask you guys as well. Why do you think it is that your music struck a chord and stayed with the European market? Because they still love Shok Paris.
True. I honestly think we have so much music goes in cycles here in this country.
Right.
And, it just happens that way. People were a little bit more musically finicky.
Right.
But there's, like the people here, everybody here is into metal. They haven't changed. Mm-hmm. It's everyone else that changes. I mean, I have a lot of friends that were into metal. Now they're into country.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, not me.
Nah.
I live in the country, but I'm still metal.
Nice. Well, it's got to be nice for you guys to see that there is still so much love for the band. I mean, obviously the band had its day, and then there was the Aftershock project. I guess there still is, although you guys aren't really there in that. But, there's still a love for that sound and that style that you guys created, all these years later, which is just fantastic.
True. See, and hopefully you can go ahead and tell.
What's that?
We can tell. Well, it hasn't stopped. We're working on it.
Hopefully they're going to love what's coming up next.
Yeah,
We're kick him in the head one last time, maybe one more time after that.
The new CD's we are mastering, working on the mastering as we speak.
Okay.
Now, are you
Screaming here is doing everything.
Are you trying to beat Guns N' Roses' record for taking as long to record?
I
this
think
thing?
that's been beat
Yeah.
already.
We said
I don't know how long was that.
Yeah. We said we were
13
going to do
years.
this. Well, ours was 10. We said 2010. We said we were going to record it.
The first time we got back together for a reunion was 2004. So
Up
count
the
the
hand.
years. We
Right.
started working on new
15.
stuff, and it's a whole different world out there, and we're so far apart. I mean, it's not like the old days where we're
Right.
getting together every night at the practice hall and then going out on the weekends together.
Right.
It's a lot different, especially when we got people that got families now. And
Right. So what is the drive for it? Is it just that you
love to do
miss
it.
doing it? Is that really what it is?
just love to do it.
We love this style of music and what we do, and it's just like, hey, it doesn't matter whether someone else wants to hear it or not. We're going to try and see what
Right.
happens. But we love the style of music. It hasn't changed. We haven't changed. We just got older.
Well, you guys released a single years ago as a precursor to what was going to be the new record, and we were like, when's that new record coming out?
Yeah. Believe me, we've heard a lot of it.
We talk to we do a lot of interviews and whatnot, and we ask the question, it's just like, how do because everybody, well, we're going to get a new CD and we're going to make new music and we're going to do this. It's like, what's the point? It's like, you know, unless you're a touring band or you're just doing it for the passion of doing it, what are you going to get out of it? What's your long game here? And it's just like, well, you know, and it's like, it isn't 1980s anymore. You know, it's not that way anymore.
Unfortunately, music is a cruel mistress. You're deep in it. You know this ain't good for you. You know, it's the law of diminishing returns as each year clicks off the calendar. But you're in, you know. Just as I thought I was out, they pulled me back in type of situation. But, yeah, I mean, for instance, I just did this interview, and they were asking about the nuts and bolts of like being in music. I was thinking, like, this band I was in, like, Face Value, so I think we sold like 15,000 copies of the first full length, Price of Maturity, which that's a good amount of records for a hardcore band that's not like DRI or 7 Seconds or
Right.
your classic starter bands that are in every record store across America. That's a good.
Sure.
See, and All's Rotten from Pittsburgh, they sold like 30,000 copies of their 7-inch. But that is like, back then that was like, oh, that's pretty good. Those bands are doing pretty good. But now we'd be like, oh my God, that's like, they're like fucking Lady Gaga. No one sells records anymore, you know?
Right.
They just don't, and it sucks.
No, you're so right, man. I'm curious as a hardcore fan, because I don't ever get to talk hardcore with anybody. What do you think of Cro-Mags without Paris Mayhew?
The Cro-Mags
Can
are
that be really Cro-Mags?
they're the Bromags. The Cro-Mags are an interesting proposition. They're a reality show come to life. I mean, each guy hates each guy. You're talking about a band where the bass player tried to stab the singer backstage. You're talking about a band where the bass player hired someone to break into John Joseph's apartment and try to inject him with AIDS. I mean, it doesn't get any better. But it's a nostalgia thing. They come to town. They play Age of Quarrel. People go fucking ape shit.
Right.
But if you're asking, like, the legitimacy of it, I mean, I saw them at the Bohemia in Tremont, which is one of the scariest show I ever saw, and that band was a motherfucker. They were terrifying. And Paris Mitchell Mayhew, well, if you read John Joseph and Harley's books, he's like, sounds like the most cancerous man alive. He made the sound, you know.
Yeah.
He was essential to that first record, you know.
Yeah, no, you're definitely right about that, man. It's just weird that, you know, for me anyway, I'm not old enough to remember all of that stuff, but I'm old enough to remember a good amount of it, and it is just so weird seeing those bands. It was so much about heart and soul and real.
And energy and street level appeal, you know.
And that's almost why they all died away, because they all had such energy and such purity and such venom that they all just kind of disintegrated under the weight of it.
The weight of their own bullshit.
Yeah.
It's a hard lifestyle to live. I love all that hard. You know, I was one of these guys that got into hardcore because it spoke to me. It was accessible. I could do it. I had something to say. I wanted to do lyrics that weren't about your typical heavy metal lyrics. But I came from really, before that, I came from the new wave of British heavy metal scene. I mean, I was at Shattered every weekend, Warped every weekend, going to Diversions and Shadows and the Pop Shop and seeing all those shows. The Variety, I must have seen 50 shows at the Variety.
Right.
And I was never one of these guys that got into hardcore and said, I'm a punk now, and I renounce heavy metal, you know.
Right.
I may have cut my hair, but it's like I never stopped going to see fucking Raven, you know.
Right. Exactly.